So yeah, throw out ideas for stuff you wanted us to expand on, maybe we touched on but didn't quite get, or whole topics altogether. I do tend to pull things from like the Facebook group, which is where I got the math from.
Oh, okay.
I worked out some of the math on my lunch break for work.
Oh, wonderful.
So I do have a method for the mathness. I did not think about that earlier.
The mathness?
Math. Balancing. So, if you're coming up with your own creatures, monsters, whatever, the easiest thing to do is just take from the book and throw a new skin on it.
Right.
Like, honestly, that's the easiest thing. But if you want to make something that's new, or you can't quite find what you want, again, you can just tweak something from the book, but depending on how much you want to tweak it, you could run into some issues. So I was chatting with this guy on Facebook. He had a question. He was a new DM, and he said, I'm going to make an intentionally OP campaign. All my players are going to be intentionally OP. It's going to be like army fighter. They're going to be fighting armies, basically.
Oh, okay.
On their own, right?
Right.
Think like crazy, like anime style. They're just going to be
like
slaying
Dynasty
armies.
Warriors type thing, where you take a swing and there's 6 people that are gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I pictured when you started talking about it. I was like,
Right.
okay. Well, you got to figure out what you want to really accomplish. I'm assuming most people don't want to do that, because then you just have level 20 characters and there's already a system for that.
Right.
But there is some basic math that you can do if you're creating something new. And it works really well in my experience. It just takes a little bit of work on your part. And if people are interested, I can make an Excel spreadsheet that just calculates this for you. I'm thinking about doing that anyways, because there's a lot of calculations and generators and things like that are really easy to put into an Excel spreadsheet. And there's plenty of them online already. Maybe I'll link some later. So what you want to do, the purpose is to make sure that it's fairly balanced, or you can control how difficult it is. So what you want to do is gather up, you need 3 metrics. You need to know the HP for the players and the enemy. We're just going to use generic terms, right? So that's total for each. Once you got that, you need to know what they need to roll to hit. So this is the part that trips people up. You can't just look at what they roll on average. You need to know what they need to roll in order to hit. That's straight D20. So whatever their bonus is to hit, you need to take it out of the enemy's AC and vice versa. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, it's like in the old school, the to hit AC 0, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's really similar to that.
Oh, okay.
Because that was, that system, the idea behind that system is kind of how they developed some of the stuff for the later generations of D&D.
Right.
And that was too much for everyone to be calculating all the time. Mm-hmm. And there were too many floating things, and it was just craziness. Some people like it. I don't have any problems with it, of course.
Right. There's different ways.
I didn't discover D&D until 5e because I just didn't, and so I'm not used to
guy,
it.
So I've been here a minute.
Yeah. So here's the math that I do, and it is kind of based on that system because that it worked really well.
Right.
So you need to know the HP for the players and the enemies, the totals for each, and that's all of the enemies combined in a scenario and all of the players combined.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna write your total for each group.
That works.
And this math works up until you have groups of like 8 or 10, and then you got to do something else.
So it'd be like an easy encounter, or like a...
Well, you can tweak the numbers to figure that out.
Oh, okay.
Too. Yeah. So what you're going to have to do is grab the roll to hit. That's the D20. I shouldn't do capital. D20 with no modifiers.
As an example, it would be like a 16.
Yeah, so if your enemy's got an AC of 16,
right,
and you roll and you've got a bonus of 2, what we're going to do is, instead of saying they need to roll a 16 or whatever, you need to know what they need to roll to hit without any of the bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, that same example. the enemy has an AC of 16. You've got to hit +2.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the number we're looking for is 14. They need to roll a 14 to hit them.
Right.
We need to know what that roll is because we need to work off that percentage.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
D20 with no modifiers. Example: enemy has AC 16. PC has +2. So we have 14 on the D20. Oh no, it went over to 2 lines. I'll just write 14 on the D20. I don't know why I hate going over the lines.
It seems like you have more space than you really do.
Yeah. So there you go. I hope that makes sense.
So you're basically taking the buff out of what the characters would get with their bonuses, essentially.
And we're taking it out of the enemy's AC.
Oh, okay.
Because we need to know that on that D20, what do you got to roll in order to hit them?
Right.
So you gotta figure out that average for your players because not everyone has the same bonuses. Not all your enemies have the same AC.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So you need to know the average roll that it takes to hit and the average AC of your enemy.
Okay.
Which, as you're the DM, it's complicated to think about a little bit, but it's not really that complicated to do once you're like, oh, this is how it works. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And then you need to know what the average damage output is. If they rolled their attack, whatever their moderate attack is, what is the average damage? So if you have a party of 4 players and they have D10 weapons to make the math easy.
Right.
Well, your average is what, like 5.5 on a D10.
Mm-hmm.
So you add all that up. So you end up with about
in
20.
a round you could have about 22 points of damage, essentially.
Yeah. So yeah, you got like 22 points of damage in a round if everyone's attacking the bad guy.
Right.
So you need to know average damage output. And this is assuming they hit every roll because we're going to work with that. We're going to work with that inaccuracy later.
Right.
Oh, average with a D. That makes it better. Mid damage for all successful attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Did I spell that right? Oh, I never spell successful right.
Well, it doesn't have a squiggly line there, so it looks like you got it.
So, and that's it. That's all you need. Those three metrics, and you can create an encounter or a new creature or a new ability. As long as you know how it affects these metrics, you'll be good to go.
Cool. That's pretty awesome.
The easiest way to practice this is to take your party and then build one creature,
right,
or one environmental effect, or one whatever. As long as you can get this stat, this information from whatever it is you're working with, you can make it balanced.
It makes sense.
So once we have those, we can just start doing the math. Now let's see. We've got. I know I just dropped to like -8 viewers.
It's totally fine.
So let's work with an example. I gotta like figure out how to make my stuff like fancy, like colors and whatnot. Yeah, there's like CSS and anyways.
Yeah, you'd be something.
If anyone's listening to this and they know, please join my Discord and tell me how to use CSS. The guides were less than helpful. I guess I could ask this dude at work.
I guess you could YouTube it too.
Yeah, who YouTubes how to do things?
I guess. Yeah. Well,
except for everybody. All right. So our example. Let's take a look at the players. We'll assume that the players and the monsters have the same stats because it's easier to just do the math that way, and I don't have to show you how to do it twice.
Right.
So the players combined have a total of 100 HP.
Cool.
Oh no, I did a thing.
Oh well.
I can undo a thing.
You can edit it.
No,
Just
I don't want to delete it.
Don't delete it. Don't type all that over.
Oh lord. So they've got 100 HP.
Mm-hmm.
They need to roll. Let's say they need to roll a 14. They need to roll a natural 14 to hit, and then they need, they output 25 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Average damage
per round.
Per round. Players and mobs equal. So you do all the math. and it comes out, hey, these guys are exactly equal. Or if you're trying to design something, figure out all this stuff for your players, and then assume that the creature starts out equal, or the environmental effect, or the power change, or whatever. If you're working to create a new ability for your player, start out with, this is your enemy, right? You figure out how hard you want it to hit and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
just a good starting point, basically.
Yeah, just throw out numbers that are kind of average for your players' rounds, and this is pretty average. It's a little bit high on the HP. These are like level 2 characters versus something with natural armor, right? That's this right here.
Yeah,
it's a pretty standard encounter.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And then you can alter the numbers from here as you see it, if you want to make the encounter a little easier, or if you want to make it a little more challenging. So. Yeah,
we'll flesh that out as we go on.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need to do is this 14 to hit. There are 6 rolls that the players can make to hit.
Right.
14 and up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that this is, what is 6 out of 20? 45%? No, that's stupid. That's calculator. I need help. That's sorry.
Isn't it like 30%?
Yeah,
or something
it is.
like that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So they've got let's just change this number to give them a little bit more realistic, because I know how this math kind of works out just by looking at it for a second, and I'm like, that's too many rounds. So they need to roll a 12 to hit. With bonuses, that's actually a little bit more average. That's a bandit with like plate armor.
Right.
Right. So
plate armor or leather armor?
Probably leather armor, actually. Yeah.
It's 10 plus your dexterity modifier, which is,
so
on average is usually like a 2.
Yeah, so that's like it's a bandit with leather armor. So with a 12 to hit, then you're going to be hitting 45% of the time. I love how I did that math right there in my head, but I couldn't do 14.
Right.
And those are the numbers you need. You need to take that percentage. Get this in percentage. And we can do some math. So the first thing you're going to do, you need to know how many rounds it's going to take. How many rounds is it going to take for the players to take down this monster, or the monster to take down the players?
Right.
Since they're equal right now, they're just bashing each other. We can figure out the math on how to do that. You've got,
of course, it's all an average.
Yeah,
these guys roll 20s like left and right. It's gonna be a lot shorter.
So what you can... Oop, that's not the explanation I needed. You're going to take the hit points. You need to divide them out by the amount of damage. So that's 25. That's going to give you 4 rounds if everyone hits and rolls average damage on each of their...
That makes sense.
Right? So if they all rolled and hit just average... That's, some people roll low, someone rolls a crit, and, they average it out.
Right.
And the more players you have, the more accurate this information is.
Mm-hmm.
After you get under 4 players, you have to start worrying about, if one of the characters dies, well, then their average damage output just, tanked.
Yeah, exactly.
So you gotta think about that. But starting out your encounters, this works pretty dang well.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I use, and my characters don't seem to have trouble with it. Unless I want them to, and I'll show you how to tweak that. It's 4 rounds. So then we're going to take, if everyone hits on every round, we know that doesn't happen because they only have a 45% chance to hit. So now we have to add in the rounds that they miss.
Right.
So now we add in all those rounds they miss. We do that by taking or that they do hit, which we know represents 45% of the rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And we just say, okay, they missed 65. They're going to miss 55% or 55, 55% of the time. So we take those 4 rounds, 4, and we're going to add in another 65% or 55% of 4.
Like 9.5, I suppose.
Oh my gosh, I cannot.
Oh, you're gonna multiply versus add?
Point. Yep.
MDOS, where are you?
Right here, that's what the parentheses are for.
Right? Perfect.
Right? So you've got your original 4 plus 55% more, because we already know that 4 rounds equals 45% of the total battle, because they only hit 45% of the time. Based on that, again, that D20, which is why you need that raw number. Is this making sense?
Somewhat. I'm trying to remember what comes first.
The parentheses.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
So
equals.
Yeah.
What would it equal?
So this equals.
Is that looking at like 13 rounds?
6.2.
Is it? God, my math sucks.
Yeah. Well, you got. Yeah, I just.
0.5.
So just with those things, we know how many rounds it's probably going to take before one side's dead.
Oh, okay.
All right, they're gonna be out in 6.2 rounds, which we're gonna go with 7 because you don't have partial rounds. They die on the one of them is gonna die on the 7th round, likely.
Right.
Because at 6 rounds you've got 4 players. That's 24 attacks.
So no, that's a good average.
You're approaching like scientific average already. Right. If you have one more player, now all of a sudden you're over the 33 that you need to be scientifically valid.
Right.
No, that's not the same for the monsters, but it is for the players.
Mm-hmm.
So, what you end up doing, and here's where it gets confusing.
Oh, now it's getting confusing.
You have the stats for both,
right?
The players and the mobs. Well, now we figured out this is what you do if everything's equal. One of them's going to be gone during the 7th round, probably.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully.
Yeah. But what do you do if the monsters and the players don't have all the same stats?
Right.
How do you, there's a disconnect here. So what you actually have to do is you use the same numbers. You use your, you just decide whose HP you're using and whose damage you're using.
Mm-hmm.
So basically this is how long it takes the players to knock down a monster with 100 HP, and they need to roll a 12 to hit. You're going to go ahead and use your player to figure out how deadly this thing is to your players. You're going to use the player health, player, roll to player the AC from the players. What monsters need to roll? Natural. And then the monsters damage. Oops. And that tells you how long it's going to take the monsters to kill your players.
Right.
And then you just reverse them. I'm gonna take just that wording out right there.
Okay.
And I'm gonna put this in parentheses. So that tells you whoever's health you use. I guess that's the easier way to put it. Whoever's health you use the monster stats on the other side.
Right.
And if you're going to use the monster health, use the player stats on the other side. So that tells you what you need to do to kill one side or the other. What you want, if you want a fair fight, is when you do those for the players and the monsters, you're going to end up with about the same number. So in this case, it's exactly equal because all their stats are the same. But if you had like a 13 to hit, which is, I don't know, like 52% or something like that, You had like a 13 to hit. Now all of a sudden, one side has a little bit of advantage, so they're going to have a lower number. Whoever has the lower number is tougher.
Right. Makes total sense.
And whoever has to, whoever has to roll the more times is obviously gonna lose. So that's how you can kind of determine how to set that up. You just do the math. Let's do another example, maybe.
Sure.
Does it make sense?
It makes sense. It's just a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is.
It makes it a very, very balanced system. That's for sure.
And the thing is,
as a custom-made monster, like if you're starting from
this is
pure scratch.
Yeah. This works really well until you get into swarms, which actually the guy who I was talking to earlier was like, "Oh yeah, I was going to do a swarm. Thanks for letting me know."
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What you do when you get into swarms is instead of taking your player's average damage output, you look at their average damage output, and then you look at your individual of the swarm max health. And if their average output is higher than their max health, the enemy's max health is now your average.
Oh, okay.
Because most attacks target one creature.
Right.
You can bump that up a little bit if your players have a lot of like fire attacks where they can go in a line or acid splash. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If you have those, then you can bump that number up a little bit. But once you get up to like 10 mobs, there's so much chance that math isn't going to help.
Right.
Math doesn't help you. D&D 5th edition was not made for combat that large anyways, and so even the math in the game doesn't help. So you can still use this. Just remember, if you're going to do mobs of like 8, I would say like 8 plus, you need to use the max health. If it's lower than your player's average damage, you need to use the max health for the mobs.
Right.
I did that with goblins actually in one of our other games.
Really?
There were 12 goblins. And I was like, they're going to destroy the players. Because there were 4 players, 12 goblins. And so I figured out, if I use the basic stats from the book, the players are going to die.
Right.
Like, real fast.
Yeah, the challenge rating is way too high for players.
Right, but I still wanted you guys to be able to fight a bunch of goblins. So I figured out, okay, I'll just make them like a little bit weaker goblins, but I didn't have anything to base it off of.
Was that around the fire at night?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But,
so yeah, having a player's handbook is definitely beneficial.
Or at least the system reference document. You can get that on Wizards of the Coast website. I mean, just giving that to your players to start out, or sending them the link to the website is great. It's got everything broken down in real nice, neat categories. I'm sure you've probably seen that.
So as far as the homebrew is considered, so they have obviously they have the custom, or not the custom. So they have the adventures that you can buy that are the classic adventures that are levels 1 through 4, and you read it out of the book. And then obviously, I guess the quote-unquote homebrew would be whatever story you create. So a lot of times what I do as a DM, I'll take like a cool story or a plot from a movie that I like or something from a show or a video game, and I will tweak things. So for example, like we could do the plot for like Skyrim. Say you are a prisoner, you escape from this fort, and now you are a fugitive, and that's basically how you can start your players. You can change the names of things, you can change the locations, you can change the enemies, you can change everything you want, and just basically get yourself a loose skeleton. It's never good to start out saying, this is how the story is going to go, these are what the players are going to do, and this is how it's going to end. Because you can never really control what the players are going to do. You're basically there to help them through this story. So what you can do is sit down. It doesn't take very long. You can sit there for 30 minutes, just jot down different ideas that you think would be cool as a story. You can flesh out details and stuff like that if you like. And you can even just talk to your players. Say, hey, what kind of stuff are you guys interested in? First dungeon crawl with them is because none
How
of
many
them
players do you have?
played on. I want to get a feel for what they like and some. Yeah, I mean, and you don't have to keep it a complete mystery either. You could ask them, like I said, say, hey, what are you guys interested in? Do you guys want something that's mystery based? Do you guys just want to hack and slash? Do you want to loot for golden treasure? Do you eventually want to, own your own keep or own your own castle or whatever you want to do? And a lot of times they'll just straight up tell you, say, hey, we want to basically, do dungeon crawls and find cool gear. And you can say, cool. I will base the story off of, an old guy in a pub, as generic as you possibly be, heard rumors of a mine somewhere that could potentially hold treasures. And then just listen to your players and let them flood the table with information, and you can just basically play off of what they're doing. It's kind of overwhelming at first, just being able to describe information and stuff like that, but after a couple sessions, you'll kind of fall into the niche of it, and it'll be pretty simple for you.
Yeah, and there's a particularly powerful question that most people don't think about is when you're done playing, did you have a good time?
Yeah, it's all about having fun.
A lot of people don't really even think about what they enjoyed until you ask them, did you enjoy that? And then all of a sudden they have all this information like, oh yeah, I did. I liked that part where we did this. Or like, I wasn't really interested in this part, but I thought it would be cool if maybe... And you have a lot to work with. They can give you a lot to play on.
Right. So yeah, definitely having a session 0, like you mentioned, is really beneficial.
Yep.
You can all sit down and basically roll for stats. You can go through what races your guys want to be, different characters, kind of talk it out. If they have any questions, since they're all first-time guys, you can figure it out there. And then within that homebrew, you basically control the world. The PDFs and the guides and stuff like that are just loose rules that you can follow. If you decide that this is a, home rule that we are not going to use initiative bonuses, or
homebrew
that...
races. Huh? These are a homebrew race too.
Oh yeah, that's totally fine. I had a character that was
I think 3 of our characters are homebrew.
Yeah, we've got lots of homebrew characters too. And another thing is, you can always go online. There's a couple of different websites. You can type in custom homebrew races and custom homebrew classes and search through Google. And sometimes people have pre-made classes. All you have to do is just kind of review them, double check to make sure that they're not horribly overpowered or that they're completed. Because sometimes... they won't be finished all the way, or you can just take that loose idea and run with that. Yeah, and you can nerf stuff too that's pretty simple. Like if it says 3d6 for damage, you can change it to 2d6. If it says it's 120-foot range for this spell, you can change it to 60 feet. Just different things. A lot of times what I do as a DM as well is if I see that something is going too difficult for the players, because ultimately it's based off of... making sure that they're having fun. You can follow the rules to a T and be the most amazing storyteller, but if your players aren't enjoying it, it's kind of pointless. You're there to tell a story and let your friends basically work their way through it and enjoy the adventure. So you can totally nerf monsters, you can buff monsters if you see that they are having a difficult time with an enemy. What I'll do is sometimes I'll cut the HP of the enemy in half, or sometimes I will lower the armor class. I will purposely not hit players that are having a really frustrating time. They're not rolling really well. I'm hitting them a lot with damage. I will direct the enemy somewhere else, or I will make a circumstance to where the player has the ability to make a massive comeback. And stuff like that really, really gets a player fired up and, in love with the game. If you're really rolling like crap and you just think, I don't really want to play very much anymore, you can throw in something to where all of a sudden they get this miraculous boost of strength and they just feel the will to, fight on. and they end up doing something crazy amazing, that is going to stick with that player, especially first-time players. It's going to stick with them for quite some time. You guys ever had someone try to use OP stuff just to be someone who's going to kill everything? I'm also scared because a lot of guys are flakes.
No, DMs don't really have to deal.
Yeah, I mean...
I can't even finish that sentence. Yeah.
Ultimately...
Players do that sometimes.
You'll run across players, especially new players, that are used to video games, where they want the best equipment, they want to be the person that one-hit kills everything. And that's totally understandable. And that's fine. Ultimately, you are the game master. You control the world. And if you want to make it to where they don't find magical items until way later on, or they, don't find immense amounts of gold till later on, it's purely up to you. There's a lot of players that start out at level 5. We do a lot of games where we don't start at level 1. We want to start a little later so that we're more experienced and just moving stuff along. You can totally change things how you want. And a lot of times, too, if we roll natural ones on equipment, you'll break the equipment, which is totally something you can do.
Well,
so
I have this fun rule with natural ones. That's not really relevant to what they're asking about. I'll stay on topic here. I tend to ramble. Apologize.